All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, in this episode, I'm attempting to judge the Chipper effect, right? What kind of impact can Chipper Jones continue to have on the Braves offense, even though he is long retired? And the great thing I love about Chipper, who is a lifelong Brave, obviously I love that about him, that he stuck around, right? But he continues to stick around. He continues to be an influence on this team. He continues to be engaged. And no, he's not a full-time coach. He has a life outside of the Braves and outside of baseball, which you appreciate. He's a dad and a husband and doing all those other things too. But he still cares about the Braves, and he obviously still loves baseball and loves the science of hitting. And so I love the fact that Chipper is still around. So I do think he has a big impact on the Braves. I think it is low key, like one of the just secrets of why the Braves offense has been so good, not only in 2023 when it was historic, but why it's been so good for, the last several years. And of course, this year it hasn't been that good, right? It's been a lot of guys just playing below their ability levels. And so I do want to kind of focus on Chipper in this episode and think about, can we can we find some magic from Chipper and his influence on the Braves in 2024? And I don't want to discount the importance of the Braves hitting coach Kevin Seitzer and their assistant hitting coach Bobby Magianis. They do a lot of hard work and they have a big influence too. And I think they are really good influences on the guys. But you can imagine the level of uh, you know, influence, gravitas, whatever you want to say that Chipper has when he talks to any current Braves hitter. I mean, this guy's a Hall of Famer. We all know the greatness of Chipper Jones. And if you're new to the Braves or new to State of the Braves, let me let me tell you, Chipper Jones, Hall of Fame switch hitter, over 450 home runs, a 300 batting average lifetime from both sides of the plate. This guy knows hitting. And on top of that, he's a son of a coach. And I think that's why he is able to so effectively communicate hitting on a high level and yet to the normal person who maybe doesn't know the intricacies of hitting all that well. So, um, Chipper is technically designated as a Braves hitting consultant. So he does have an official role with the Braves, and yet he's not in the dugout. He's not in uniform, that sort of thing. You will see him at a good bit um, of home games. But here's the thing, Chipper was really active in spring training and throughout the 2023 season, helping guys kind of as he saw things. He would just engage those guys quietly and in his own time and maybe give them one or two nuggets and it really helped. And again, if you've ever heard Chipper talk on these, especially on these Braves broadcasts with the Braves greats, I really love hearing those guys. It comes out, right? It's very obvious that Chipper has tremendous wisdom in terms of his coaching ability to coach hitting. And so I do think that he had a big role to play in the Braves' historic 2023 offensive season. He has been a constant influence on Austin Riley in his career. I think a lot of credit, obviously, primary credit goes to Riley and doing all the work, but I think Chipper has had a big influence on Riley. You'll recall early in his career, it looked like he wasn't going to make it because he just could not lay off of that slider away. And then things kind of changed. And when he locks in, and of course, this is going to be a big part of what I talk about in this episode, but he starts going to the big part of the ballpark, especially for him locking into right center field. And, when he does that, he is lethal. He's one of the best hitters and especially power hitters in baseball. And, I think Chipper too, a lot of this episode was spurred on by an interview I listened. Chipper gave an interview on local Atlanta radio and talked about he talked with Ozuna a good bit last year when he was going through his struggles and talking about Ozuna knocking down the center field wall, right? Just focus on going up the middle, hit the ball hard up the middle. And of course, if you've watched Ozuna since his struggles in April last year, That's basically all he's done. He stays to the big part of the ballpark really well. I think he's done maybe even a better job of that this season than last season, and it's why he's gotten off to a crazy good start. And you kind of want to tell the rest of the Braves hitters, just do what he's doing, do what Ozuna's doing. And obviously, it's way harder than just telling somebody to do that. They all know it. They can see Marcel and how he has dominated baseball early in this season. It's one thing to know you got to do it. It's another thing to go out and do it. And that's one of the things that makes baseball such a hard game, such a mental game. But yeah, it seems like Chipper has maybe early on in spring training and that sort of thing been a little less active this season than last season. I'm not positive at how accurate that is, but it seems like it to me. But I think he definitely is re-engaging as well. He's not a full-time coach, so he has. I'm not blaming him. He has, um, a life and he has other things he's doing, but I would love for Chipper as much as possible to be around the Braves, and I think only good things can happen offensively when he does that. And I think the Braves are going to start reaching their potential offensively again if Chipper can step in and kind of work that magic. The biggest sign to me last year that Chipper was a big influence on that team in 2023 was the Braves' commitment last year to hitting the ball to the big part of the ballpark, up the middle, center field, and the opposite gaps. Chipper is unwavering in his commitment to hitting the ball up the middle and the opposite way. Of course, that's how he played the game, and it's how he won a batting title. It's how he hit 45 home runs in 1999 and won the MVP. It's how he did all of those things, and he did it from both sides of the plate again. I probably don't have to remind you that the 2023 Braves were historically great, right? They rivaled the 1927 Yankees in possibly being the greatest offense of all time. That team, the 2023 Braves, had a team slugging percentage of 501. They're the first team in the history of baseball with a team slugging percentage of over 500. And they had 8 players with a slugging percentage of over 450. So it wasn't just a couple guys at the top that were just so dominant, right? Just dragging up those numbers. They had it across the board. And yet this season, 2024, it's Ozuna, d'Arnaud, and no one else who's over 450 slugging percentage. We've talked about, and I've done episodes about the struggles of Acuna and Riley and Olson. I'll mention those guys again. But it is pretty much team wide, right? Michael Harris hasn't really gotten off yet. RC got off to a quick start, but has fallen back. Of course, Murphy's been hurt. Um, and even Ozzy, was hurt a little bit, but just hasn't been quite where you want him to be either. Not pulling off of the ball, which is a really important thing. Obviously, if you're trying to go up the middle, you can't pull off the ball, but not pulling off the ball really does require constant attention for most hitters, right? It's a hard thing to do, and especially power hitters, right? And I think especially as the Braves have struggled and not hit home runs, I think they've just naturally started to put pressure on themselves to hit home runs, and that is just a self-fulfilling prophecy where you are pulling off the ball, trying to hit the home run, and all you're doing is either pulling balls foul, or grounding out, hitting the ball off the end of the bat, or swinging and missing it at off speed away. And that's what we've seen a lot of this year, especially from Olson and Riley and Ronald. Riley always fights this bad habit, but again, Chipper's helped him a lot. I think Acuna's issues have stemmed a lot from bad, his timing is off. And of course, that I think had a lot to do with, he had that little knee tweak in spring training, and then he gets sat for about 10 or 15 days. And I really do think that threw him off a lot. And, side note, I'm not necessarily blaming the Braves for sitting Acuna. I mean, of course, you have to be on some level of careful with Ronald and his health. But I wonder if they look back at that decision and question that a little bit. I wonder if the MO for the Braves, they are very cautious with any kind of, inflammation or any kind of pain that a guy has. We've seen that with Riley recently. They're going to sit him. And you understand that, right? Protecting the player and wanting them for the long haul. But I really think it set up Ronald to have a struggle early. And, he wasn't hitting many home runs in spring training. And I don't think he was quite right back then, but, maybe just playing through it in spring would have helped him to get through it quicker and get ready for the season. Could they have set Ronald for just a day or two or three, and then he comes back and he's not quite so rusty? Um, and then just monitor the knee for a while after that, and keep your swing timing good, and just monitor the knee. I don't know. Probably, but it is hindsight. I do realize that. But anyways, getting back to Chipper, anyone who has heard Chipper talking about hitting, you're like, man, this guy is a hitting genius. It's not surprising that he's a Hall of Famer, and he has a Hall of Fame resume, but it is rare for all-time greats to be able to communicate so well their craft. Ted Williams might have been the other one who was great at that. I mean, you can find a lot of old videos on Ted Williams talking about hitting, maybe Tony Gwynn, but Chipper is another one for sure. So look, let's dive into some of the Chipper Jones basics of hitting, and of course, this is not exhaustive, and I wish I had the pull to bring Chipper in, and I could just interview him and let him talk talk for himself. Look, you can also find some of these interviews that Chipper has done recently, and I really encourage you to do it because it's great stuff. But let me try to boil it down as well, and just give you some of my thoughts as well. So, the number one thing that I've heard recently Chipper say is getting guys to hit north. That's what he says. Hit north, meaning hit the ball up the middle, but also hit it with authority up the middle. One of the signs Chipper says to look for when a hitter is off is that he's hooking the ball, right? Meaning he's pulling the ball, and it's that downspin that you see in that hook. Sometimes it's hooking, all the way foul, hooking the ball down the line. So in other words, not every ball, not every hard hit ball is equal, right? I think that's interesting to think about, because hard hit rate is one thing that has become a really popular metric to judge hitters. But I do think that's incomplete. And when you listen to Chipper, that does ring true, that you can hit the ball and duck hook the ball, or hit the ball with downspin, and it doesn't do as much damage. It's hooking foul. It's got topspin, and it dives short. It dives to the outfielder just for an easy out, even though it might be a line drive, or it dives down in front of the outfielder and it's just a single. So it's just not as much damage is done with that kind of a hit. So you want that backspin on the ball, and you tend to get that more when you hit the ball to the big part of the ballpark. And that's what we saw last year so much. And that's what we're seeing so little of this year, except really from Marcell. So when you just listen to that, right, the idea that, when you hook the ball, you put that downspin on it, that sounds a lot like the balls we're seeing from Matt Olson and Ronald and Austin Riley, right? Foul ball home runs. We've seen a ton of those. Balls dying at the warning track, or just going directly into the gloves of outfielders. The announcers keep pointing out, especially with Olson, that he is hitting the ball hard. You can chalk up a lot of it to bad luck. And I think there's some of that, certainly, right? That's always going to be a part of baseball. You hit a line drive to a guy and he just catches it. But I do think that there is a connection between the better players and better luck. I think we saw this with Freddie Freeman all the time. I think we saw it with Chipper all the time. And the ball will carry more, and it will find the gaps more when you hit the ball to the big part of the ballpark. And again, we saw that a ton from Matt Olson last year with 54 home runs and just doing crazy damage. And that's what we're seeing from Marcell Ozuna. He's doing it really well. Everything he hits right now is going to the big part of the field, and he's being rewarded for it. And you certainly notice that Ozuna's ball is carrying and the others aren't. And, I've heard a lot of talk about the ball being deadened this year. And again, what I've said is I think that might be true to a point. Like maybe it's 5 or 10 feet of, less carry on the ball this year. But when you see Ozuna get into a ball, it's going out. And, sometimes he's not even fully getting it and is going out. He's getting carry when other guys aren't. But again, because I think he's hitting it to the big part of the ballpark. All right, so I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but that's what Chipper is all about. Now, another thing that Chipper mentioned was Jared Kelenic, and that he really wants to start getting with Kelenic. And he's Kelenic's hit two home runs here early. He's looked well. He looked good from the start, but he wasn't really tapping into his power. And now he's hit a couple home runs. It's looking a little better. But I'm excited to hear that Chipper wants to engage with Kelenic, get him to again hit the ball north, hit the ball with authority to the big part of the park. And so I really do see Kelenic tapping into his power more in the second half of the season as he gets with Chipper more. So that's an exciting connection that I think is going to be made there. All right, so hitting the ball north is one of the big things for Chipper. Another big thing is simply getting your timing down, right? That bad timing creates a slow bat, and a slow bat equals pop-ups and a lot of swings and misses. And I think that's more of what we're seeing from Ronald than anything. But according to Chipper, let's start with Olson. According to Chipper, Olson's complex swing mechanics means he will probably always be a streaky hitter. That's just something that Chipper's talked about, that there's a lot of movement in Olson's swing. And obviously when it's locked in correctly, it is awesome. Again, that's what we saw in 2023. But yeah, it probably will encourage a lot of ebbs and flows in his performance. So as Braves fans, we may have to learn to live with that. And Olson, if you look at him just in terms of his career, he's kind of had a really good season and a bit of a down season, a really good season and a bit of a down season. So it would be growth for him to be able to pull out of this downturn and have a great season the rest of the way. And hopefully he can do that. But it's all about his timing. And Acuna's timing, again, getting back to Ronald, between his load and his swing, I mean, there's just something that is off. And if you watch him load this year, it just seems like he's almost hopping or, coming up too far. There's just a lot of action in that load. And if you watch Ronald from 2023, it was just a very simple load to the ball, quick to the ball, and his bat speed was on just another level last year. And this year, it's just very inconsistent. His bat speed is slower, and of course, he's swinging and missing a lot more. His whiff rate is way up. His strikeout rate is way up. He's not covering the balls on the opposite side of the plate, and that's always been a strength of his. He will occasionally, but not with consistency. And when he starts covering the ball away, whether it's a fastball or an off-speed pitch, that's when you know that Ronald is getting right again. But he's only going to do that when he's going up the middle and going to right field. But yeah, Chipper and his influence on Marcell Ozuna, I think, has been awesome. And again, maybe it's not all Chipper, but certainly that message to Ozuna to knock down the center field wall. That's basically exactly what Ozuna is doing. He's knocking down the center field wall with regularity. And this is the exact picture of what Acuna needs to get back to. I mean, you just remember, sometimes it's hard to remember. We have such short memories, but think back to Ronald of 2023, right? I remember that home run at Dodger Stadium that he hit that was 121 miles per hour off the bat to straightaway center field. If you watch that home run, he took a 95 mile an hour fastball that was belt high on the exact outside corner of the plate. This was not center cut fastball, right? Outside corner, and he annihilated it to center field. That ball went over 450 at 121 miles per hour. And again, his load was simpler, his bat was faster, he stayed on the ball, and it was just a beautiful thing. And I'm an amateur at breaking down swings, but again, if you contrast Ronald's swing right now with that swing, um, it just looks different, right? The load is more abbreviated, it's simple, it's quick to the ball, and right now it's just that load. It's almost like his body's rising up and then dropping back down. Um, Another home run to watch is Detroit last year. He hit a ball 461 to straightaway center, and it was a Michael Lorenzen slider. Now that one was center cut, but again, he didn't pull off of it. He hit it to dead center field, 461. And it's hard to hit a ball to dead center slider, 461, and Ronald did that. Now, he recently hit a home run in New York that was shades of last year. It's like a picture. And, obviously it's a reminder Ronald can still do it. He's just not doing it consistently right now. But yeah, that Friday home run against the Mets in New York was a picture of this. He covered the outside corner. He took that ball to center field. And so there's flashes, and maybe flashes mean that he's really close to reining it in and doing it consistently and going on a big tear. And man, that would be really fun to watch. And I'm really hopeful that it happens soon. So, ultimately, it seems like Ozuna is the only Brave right now that's really following Chipper Jones's guide to hitting. They have to get back to what they did in 2023. It's easy to focus on how successful that year was and forget the basics that led them to those good things. I think it will come, but it may require Chipper reasserting himself into this team. I think he's doing it. I really hope he's doing it. I'm sure the Braves would be open arms to allow Chipper to do whatever he wants with these hitters, especially at this point and how they have performed up to this point in the season. So I'm sure no one is going to mind that, and I really hope Chipper can work his magic again. Chipper Jones, great Atlanta Brave. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in for this episode of Stay the Braves. I'll talk to you soon.